Dear students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Vani Narula, Associate Professor from Department of Social Work, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. In this EPG Pathshala, we will discuss Sustainable Development Goals and Community Engagement. The learning outcome. After the completion of this module, you shall be able to, number 1, know the background for the development of the SDGs. Second, list the SDGs, that is the Sustainable Development Goals, and work to be undertaken therein. Develop the linkage between SDGs and community engagement. Background for the development of Sustainable Goals. SDGs. SDG is an acronym for Sustainable Development Goals. These goals succeed the Millennium Development Goals or MDGs, which the world gave itself in 2000 to overcome problems such as poverty, disease, illiteracy, etc. The SDGs replaced MDGs as goals of development and were agreed on by United Nations at the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development in Rio de Janeiro in 2012. MDGs provided direction to the nation states of the world to follow development agenda for 15 years. Though the MDGs since 1990 were able to help more than 1 billion people come out of extreme poverty, drop child mortality by more than half, increase enrollment of children in schools by more than half, and reduce the incidence of HIV/AIDS infections by almost 40%, yet the world was unable to become totally free of maladies of poverty, hunger, illiteracy, mortality, morbidity, environmental pollution, gender equality, and others. Therefore, the SDGs were formulated to keep up the development agenda on a sustainable path to make the fruits of development reach the last individual in line. Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. There are 17 goals in all, which came into being since September 25, 2015 to guide the world on a path of sustainable human development. All these are interconnected and aim to improve the quality of life of not only the present but future generations also. It is important to keep in mind that the signing of SDGs also coincided with the signing of the Agreement on Climate Change, that is COP21 at Paris, and Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction at Japan. Together, all these agreements reaffirmed the commitment of different nation states to eradicate poverty everywhere and make the planet a happy, healthy place for each and everyone. These goals are for the next 15 years, that is till 2030. Now, we will study these in detail. Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs Part 1. According to UNDP SDG Report 2016, following are the SDG goals. Goal number 1, end poverty. End poverty in all its forms everywhere. Goal 2, zero hunger. End hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Goal number 3, good health and well-being. Ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. Goal number 4, quality education. Goal number 5, gender equality. Goal number 6, clean water and sanitation. Goal number 7, affordable and clean energy. Goal number 8, decent work and economic growth. Goal number 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. Goal number 10, reduced inequalities. Goal number 11, sustainable cities and communities. Goal number 12, sustainable consumption and production. Goal number 13, climate action. Goal 14, life below water. Goal 15, life on land. Goal 16, peace, justice and strong institutions. Goal 17, partnerships for the goals. Now we will discuss these in detail. Goal 1, end poverty. End poverty in all its forms everywhere. In this goal, the target date is 2030, and the idea is to end poverty so that people earning less than $1.25 a day reduce. Another target of this goal is to reduce at least by half the proportion of men, women and children of all ages living in poverty according to their national definitions. Implement nationally appropriate social protection systems like the Atal Pension Yojana. Ensure that all men and women, particularly poor and vulnerable, have equal rights to economic resources. Build the resilience of the poor and those in vulnerable situations and reduce their vulnerability to climate-related extreme events. Ensure significant mobilization of resources to implement programs and policies to end poverty in all its dimensions. Create sound policy frameworks at national, regional and international levels which are pro-poor and gender sensitive. Goal number 2, zero hunger. End hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. Again, the target date is 2030. End hunger and ensure access by all people to nutritious and sufficient food. Second, within this, for zero hunger, we want to end all forms of malnutrition. Another way of doing it is by doubling the agricultural productivity and incomes of small-scale food producers, particularly women, indigenous people, farmers, pastoralists and fishermen. Another target of this is to develop food production systems which are resilient and have resilient agricultural practices that can adapt to climate change, extreme weather, drought, floods, etc. Another sub-part of this goal is to maintain and protect the genetic diversity of seeds, cultivated farms and plants and also domesticated animals. Also, we want to retain some related wild species through a diversified seed management and plant bank system. Another target is to increase investment, particularly in the agricultural and rural technology sector. It's also important to correct and prevent the trade restrictions and distortions in the world agriculture markets so that the underdeveloped do not suffer. Goal number 3, good health and well-being. Ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. By 2030, to reduce the global maternal mortality ratio by less than 70 per 1 lakh live births. End preventable deaths of newborns, especially children under 5 years of age. End the epidemic of AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria and other neglected tropical diseases, and also to combat hepatitis, waterborne diseases. Another target is to reduce by 1/3 premature mortality from non-communicable diseases through prevention and treatment. Strengthen programs for prevention and treatment of substance abuse. Halve the number of global deaths occurring due to injuries from road traffic accidents, provide universal access to health care which is safe, effective, quality and affordable, substantially reduce number of deaths and illnesses from chemical hazards, air and water and soil pollution and contamination, strengthen the implementation of the World Health Organization, that is WHO, Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, support research and development of vaccines and medicines, substantially increase health financing and the human resources, strengthen the capacities of countries, particularly developing, for early warning, risk reduction and management of national and global health risks. Goal 4. Quality education. Ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. The target is 2030. Ensure that all boys and girls get complete, free, equitable, quality primary and secondary education. Ensure that all boys and all girls have access to quality early childhood development care and primary education. Ensure equal access for all women and men to afford quality technical, vocational and tertiary education, including university level education. Substantially increase the number of youths and children who have relevant skills, including technical and vocational skills for employment, decent jobs and entrepreneurship. Eliminate gender disparities in education and ensure equal access to all levels of education and vocational training for the vulnerable, including persons with disabilities, indigenous people and children in vulnerable situations. Ensure that all youth and substantial proportion of adults, both men and women, achieve literacy and numeracy. Ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development. Build and upgrade education facilities that are child, disability and gender sensitive and provide safe, non-violent, inclusive and effective learning environment for all. By 2020, substantially expand globally the number of scholarships available to developing countries, particularly island nations and African countries. By 2030, substantially increase the supply of qualified teachers, including through international cooperation for teacher training in developing countries, especially the least developed countries and small island developing states. Goal number 5. Gender equality. Achieve gender equality and empower all women and children. For this, first target is to end all forms of discrimination against women and children, particularly girls, everywhere. Eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls in public and private spheres. Eliminate all harmful practices such as female genital mutilation and recognize and value unpaid care and domestic work through promotion of shared responsibility within the household and the family as a nation. Ensure women's full effective participation and equal opportunity in leadership at all levels of decision making in political, economic and public life. Ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights as agreed in accordance with the Programme of Action of the International Conference on Population and Development and the Beijing Platform for Action. Undertake reforms to give women equal rights to equal resources, particularly economic resources, financial resources, inheritance and property. Enhance the use of enabling technology, in particularly ICT, to promote empowerment of women. adopt and strengthen sound policies and enforceable legislations for the promotion of gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls at all levels. Goal number 6, clean water and sanitation. Ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. By 2030, achieve universal equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water. Also, have adequate and equitable sanitation and hygiene for all and end open defecation. Improve water quality by reducing pollution and elimination of dumping and minimizing release of hazardous chemicals. Substantially increase water resource management at all levels through trans-boundary cooperation. Protect and restore water-related systems by 2020, including mountains, forests, wetlands, rivers, aquifers, and lakes. Expand international cooperation and capacity building support to developing countries in water and sanitation related programs. Support and strengthen local communities to improve water and sanitation management. Affordable clean energy is our 7th goal. Ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all. By 2020, ensure universal access to affordable, reliable and modern energy services. Substantially increase the share of renewable energy. Double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. Enhance international cooperation to facilitate access to clean energy research and technology, including renewable energy. Expand infrastructure and upgrade technology for supplying modern and sustainable energy. Goal number 8, decent work and economic growth. Promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment and decent work for all. Sustain per capita income. Promote development-oriented policies. Achieve high levels of economic productivity through diversification. Improve progressively by 2030 global resource efficiency in consumption and production and endeavor to decouple economic growth from environmental degradation. Achieve full and productive employment and decent work for all women and men, including young persons and persons with disabilities, and enforce equal pay for equal work. By 2020, substantially reduce the proportion of youth not in employment, education or training. Take effective and immediate measures to eradicate forced labor, modern slavery, human trafficking and child labor. Protect labor rights and promote safe and secure environment for all workers, including migrant workers and women migrants and those in precarious employment. Devise and implement policies to promote sustainable tourism that creates jobs and promotes local culture and products. Strengthen the capacity of domestic financial institutions to encourage and expand access to banking, insurance and financial services for all. This can be done by increasing aid for trade, support for developing countries and developing global strategies for youth employment and implement the Global Jobs Pact of the ILO. Goal number 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. Build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization and foster innovation. Develop quality, reliable, sustainable and resilient infrastructure including regional and trans-border infrastructure to support economic development and human well-being, which is affordable and equitable and has access to all. Promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization by 2030 and raise industry's share of employment and GDP. increase the access of small-scale industrial and other enterprises, especially in developing countries, including affordable credit and their integration into value chains and markets, which you can see has been done by GST. Upgrade infrastructure and retrofit industries to make them sustainable with increased resource use efficiency and greater adoption to clean and environmentally sound technologies. Enhance scientific research and upgrade technological capabilities of industrial sectors in all countries. Facilitate sustainable and resilient infrastructure in developing countries through enhanced financial, technical and technological support, especially in African countries and landlocked small developing countries and small island developing states. Support domestic technology development and significantly increase access to ICT, that is information communication technologies. Now we are going to continue with goal number 10, reduced inequalities. Reduce inequality within and among countries. The target is 2030, progressively achieve and sustain income group of the bottom 40% of the population at a rate higher than the national average. Empower and promote social, economic and political inclusion of all, irrespective of age, sex, disability, race, ethnicity, origin, religion, etc. Ensure equal opportunity and reduce inequalities of income by eliminating discriminatory laws, policies and practices, and promote appropriate legislations, policies and actions. Adopt policies, especially fiscal, wage and social protection policies, and progressively achieve greater equality. Improve the regulation and monitoring of global financial markets and institutions. Ensure enhanced representation and voice of developing countries in international decision making. Facilitate orderly, safe and regular and responsible migration and mobility of people through implementation of well-planned and well-managed migration policies. Implement the principle of special and differential treatment for developing countries, in particular least developed countries according to the WTO agreements. Encourage official development assistance and financial flows to less developed countries, especially African countries, small island developing states and landlocked developing countries in accordance with their national plans and programs. And finally, reduce at least less than 3% of the transaction costs of migrant remittances and eliminate remittance corridors which cost higher than 5%. Goal number 11, sustainable cities and communities. Make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable by ensuring for all access to affordable housing, basic services and upgradation of slums. Provide access to safe, affordable, accessible, sustainable transport systems and improved road safety, and pay special attention to the needs of women, children, elderly and persons with disabilities in formulating your public transport systems. Enhance inclusive, sustainable urbanization and capacity for participatory, integrated and sustainable human settlement planning and management in all countries. The smart city concept comes here. Strengthen efforts to protect and safeguard the world's cultural and natural heritage. By 2030, significantly reduce the number of people who die affected by a substantial decrease in economic losses or poverty. Also, try to reduce water-related disasters, especially by allotting some money in the GDPs for it. Reduce the adverse per capita environmental impact of cities, including by paying special attention to air quality and municipal and other waste management. Provide universal access to safe, inclusive, accessible, green and public spaces, especially for women, children, elderly and persons with disabilities. Support positive economic and social environment between urban, semi-urban and rural areas by strengthening national and regional development planning. Substantially increase the number of cities and human settlements adopting and implementing integrated policies towards inclusion, resource efficiency, mitigation, adaptation to climate change, etc. Also, it should be in line with the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015-2030. Support the least developed countries through financial and technical assistance. Goal number 12, sustainable consumption and production. Ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. Implement the 10-year framework of programs on sustainable consumption and production patterns. By 2030, achieve the suitable, sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources. Halve per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer levels and reduce food loss along the supply chains. Achieve environmentally sound management of chemicals and all waste throughout their life cycle, according to the agreed international frameworks. Substantially reduce waste generation through prevention, reduction, recycling and reuse. Encourage companies, especially large and transnational companies, to adopt sustainable practices and integrate sustainable information into their reporting cycle. Promote public procurement practices that are sustainable and in accordance with the national policies. Ensure that people everywhere have relevant information. Support developing countries to strengthen their scientific and technological capacity to move towards more sustainable patterns of consumption and production. Develop and implement tools to monitor this. Rationalize inefficient fossil fuel subsidies and encourage wasteful consumption by removing market distortions. Goal number 13, climate action. Take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. Strengthen resilience and capacities to climate change related hazards and natural disasters in all countries. Integrate climate change measures into national policies, strategies and planning. Improve education, awareness and human and institutional capacity on climate change, mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction and early warning. Implement the commitment undertaken by developed countries, parties to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change to a goal of mobilizing jointly $100 billion annually by 2020. Promote mechanisms for raising capacity for effective climate-related changes, planning and management. Goal number 14, life below water. Conserve and sustainably use water, particularly of oceans, seas and marine sources for sustainable development. Prevent and significantly reduce marine pollution of all kinds, especially which is coming from land-based activities. Substantially manage and protect marine and coastal ecosystems to avoid significant adverse impacts, including strengthening their resilience and take action for restoration of the health of these coastal ecosystems. Minimize and address the impacts of ocean acidification, include through enhanced scientific cooperation. Effectively regulate harvesting and end overfishing, illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing and destructive fishing practices, and implement science-based management plans. By 2020, conserve at least 10% of the coastal marine areas. by 2020 also prohibit certain forms of fisheries subsidies which contribute to overcapacity and overfishing. By 2030, increase economic benefits to small island developing states and least developed countries. Increase scientific knowledge, develop research capacity and transfer marine technology. Provide access to small-scale artisanal fishers to marine resources and markets. Enhance the conservation and sustainable use of oceans and their resources by implementing the international law as reflected in the UN Convention on Law of the Sea, which provides the legal framework for sustainable use of ocean and sea resources. Goal number 15, Life on Land, protect, restore and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems. By 2020, ensure conservation, restoration and sustainable use of terrestrial and inland freshwater ecosystems, forests, wetlands, mountains and drylands in obligation with international agreements. Combat desertification, restore degraded land and soil, included land affected by desertification, drought and floods, and ensure conservation of mountain ecosystems. Take urgent and significant action to reduce degradation of natural habitats and halt the loss of biodiversity. Promote fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from the utilization of genetic resources. Take urgent action to end poaching and trafficking of protected species of flora and fauna. Introduce measures to prevent introduction and significantly reduce the impact of invasive alien species. Integrate ecosystems and biodiversity values into national and local planning. Mobilize and significantly increase financial resources. Mobilize significant resources from all sources, particularly for developing countries, and combat poaching and trafficking of protective species. Goal number 16, peace, justice and strong institutions. Promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development. Provide access to justice for all and build effective, accountable and inclusive institutions at all levels. Significantly reduce all forms of violence and related death rates everywhere. End abuse, exploitation and trafficking and all forms of violence against and torture of children. Promote rule of law. Provide equal access to justice for all. Reduce illicit financial and arms flow. Reduce corruption and bribery in all forms. Effective, accountable and transparent institutions, and ensure responsive, inclusive, participatory and representative decision making at all levels. Provide legal identity for all, including birth registration. Ensure public access to information. Strengthen relevant national institutions. Promote and enforce non-discriminatory laws and policies for sustainable development. Finally, the last goal, that is goal number 17, partnerships for the goals. Strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development finance. Strengthen domestic resource mobilization. Develop countries to implement fully their official development assistance commitments. Mobilize additional financial resources for developing countries from multiple sources. Assist developing countries in attaining long-term debt sustainability through coordinated policies aimed at fostering debt financing, debt relief and debt restructuring as appropriate, and address the external debt of highly indebted poor countries to reduce the debt distress. Adopt and implement investment promotion regimes. Enhance North-South, South-South and triangular regional and international cooperation. Promote the development, transfer, dissemination and diffusion of environmentally sound technologies to developing countries on favorable terms, including concessions, preferential terms as mutually agreed. Operationalize technology bank and science, technology innovation, capacity building for at least the most undeveloped of the countries. Enhance international cooperation for implementing targeted capacity building. Promote a universal rules-based, open, non-discriminatory and equitable multilateral trading system under the WTO. Increase exports of the developing countries and realize timely implementation of duty-free, quota-free market access on a lasting basis for all least developed countries, consistent with WTO. Enhance global macroeconomic stability. Ensure policy coherence for sustainable development, reach and respect each country's space and leadership. Enhance global partnerships for sustainable development. Encourage and promote effective public, public-private and civil society partnerships. Build on experiences and resource strategies for partnerships, data monitoring and accountability. Enhance capacity building support to developing countries and generate reliable data of income, gender, age, race, ethnicity, migratory status, disability, geographic location and other characteristics. Build on existing initiatives. SDGs in India. The primary organization interested with operationalizing SDGs in India is the National Institution for Transforming India, that is Niti Aayog. According to Niti Aayog, has carried out a detailed mapping of the 17 goals and 169 targets to nodal central ministries, centrally sponsored schemes and major government initiatives. Several of the government's programs are aimed at directly contributing to the advancement of the SDG agenda. A noteworthy example is the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana (PMJDY), which is the world's largest financial inclusion program. By leveraging PMJDY, Aadhaar, biometric identity system and mobile telephony, the government has disbursed a cumulative amount of rupees 1.6 trillion to 329 million beneficiaries through direct benefit transfers. This has helped to significantly enhance the efficiency of government programs. While the central government has sponsored schemes to provide employment, connects villages to cities through roads, build houses for the poor and offer education in the states, various subgroups of chief ministers have come forward to give valuable advice to the central government on such important matters such as digital payments, skill development and Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, that is Clean India campaign. As a signatory to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, As a signatory to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, India is committed to participate in the international review of progress of Sustainable Development Goals on a regular basis. The central platform for internal follow-up and review of the 2030 Agenda is the high-level political forum which has started meeting annually since 2016 under the auspice of UN Economic and Social Council. In the HLPF, UN member countries are expected to present their voluntary national review on implementation of SDGs. The VNRs thus serve as a basis for international review of progress of SDGs. According to this report, a format has been developed to map the progress of SDGs in India. For this purpose, the government has assigned SDGs as goals to nodal ministries and linked centrally sponsored schemes and related interventions with specific SDG targets. In the context of SDGs, we find that the only flaw emerging is that SDGs in their origin are top-down, that is, they are flowing to the down from the top, that is UN, to the individual, group or community. The most preferred techniques of engagement with the community are participatory techniques of learning and action and participatory rural appraisal, which we will be studying in another module on PLA. In the context of the SDGs, we find that the only flaw emerging is that of SDGs in their origin, that is, they are top down. They are flowing from the UN to the actual doer and beneficiary, individual, group or community. We can see this in this particular chart. However, the SDGs are the goals that the various nation states have committed to, not just to other nation states on the planet Earth, but to their citizens also. The state in turn can use both its organs like ministries, departments, non-state actors like NGOs to deliver the programs and services on the SDG targets. However, the attainment of these targets is not possible without the active participation of the beneficiaries for whom these goals are put in place. Therefore, it is important to engage with the beneficiaries. India is a highly populated country. It is not always possible to reach all its citizens individually. Therefore, the role of a community worker becomes very important. Through participatory techniques of community work, individuals and groups can be reached. In the following table, you can see how the Government of India has operationalized the SDGs through various ministries, centrally sponsored schemes and the related interventions. For example, if we look at the first SDG, end poverty in all its forms everywhere, the ministry is Ministry of Rural Development. The centrally sponsored scheme is National Urban Livelihood Mission, National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, National Rural Livelihood Mission, National Social Assistance Program, National Land Record Management Program. And the related interventions are Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, Atal Pension Yojana. You can now continue to see the others as these slides proceed. The source of this particular table is a Sustainable Development Goals Draft Mapping, Developing, Monitoring and Evaluation Office of Niti Aayog. So, hence we see that the Government of India has integrated the SDGs in its targets for the next 15 years. Though it has just been 2 years since the SDGs were ratified, India is on its way with full seriousness to attain the SDG targets. Various ministries aim at reaching these targets through their subunits. For example, Ministry of Rural Development intends to fulfill its targets through the National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj. Summary. Hence, we see that SDGs replaced MDGs as goals of development and were agreed on by United Nations at the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development in Rio de Janeiro in 2012. Further, these SDGs are 17 goals in all, which came into being since September 25, 2015 to guide the world on the path of sustainable human development. These SDGs are being revised here again, and they are as follows. Goal number 1, end poverty. Goal number 2, zero hunger. Goal number 3, good health and well-being. Goal number 4, quality education. Goal number 5, gender equality. Goal number 6, clean water and sanitation. Goal number 7, affordable and clean energy. Goal number 8, decent work and economic growth. Goal number 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. Goal number 10, reduced inequalities. Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. Goal 12, sustainable consumption and production. Goal 13, climate action. Goal 14, life below water. Goal 15, life on land. Goal 16, peace, justice and strong institutions. Goal 17, partnerships for the goals. Further, the attainment of these targets is not possible without the active participation of those beneficiaries for whom these goals were put in place. Therefore, it is important to engage with the beneficiaries. At national level, various countries have developed their own mechanisms for attaining SDGs. In India, Niti Aayog has carried out a detailed mapping of 17 goals and 169 targets to nodal central ministries, centrally sponsored schemes and major government initiatives. Several of the government's programs are aimed at directly contributing to advancement of the SDG agenda. Various ministries aim at reaching these targets through their subunits, and the most preferred technique of engagement are the community participatory techniques like PLA and PRA, which we will study in another module. Thank you.